So first of all, I would like to express my gratitude to the organizing committee of the conference for the opportunity to present my paper via Zoom and for all the assistance. Thank you. Depictions of Amazons form an essential part of the thematic repertoire of the late Athenian red figure imported to the northern Black Sea. According to the ancient texts, we know about Amazons in Lycia, Caria, Mesia, but the most well-known locations are Themiskra town on the Thermodont River in near-modern Turkish Samsun, area around Lake Meotis, modern Sea of Azov, as the place of their original habitation, and Tanais River, modern Don. Herodotus tells us about contacts of Amazons with Scyths, fighting, having sexual relations, and giving start to the folk of Savromats. Thus, already in antiquity, we observe a temptation to identify mythological creatures with the real folks of the territory. Warrior women living separately from men and conceiving babies from wind, water, or invited men exist in myths of different folks. Scholars believe that in these myths, memoirs about matriarchal period found reflections. Myths about independent women used to be somehow attractive for many centuries, and still are. Since long time, the word Amazon has been used not only in its literal meaning, but also in figurative meaning. Burials of women with weapons are known in different countries, but somehow the Greek stories about Amazons in near Black and Azov Sea, together with the discoveries of such burials, provoke in some scholars wishes to declare the finds of the Amazon graves. First, the word Amazon in these publications has quotation marks, so the meaning is figurative. But at a certain point, the quotation marks disappear, and the authors start to speak about Amazons on the Black and Azov Sea as if these are graves of the representatives of a really existing folk of Amazons. Some other scholars like to write concerning some special local beliefs fixed in certain Scythian or wider barbarian myths and epos. Quotations are demonstrated on this picture. Thus, either it's about burials or about certain Scythian myths, somehow an idea about identification of Scythian and other barbaric inhabitants of the northern Black Sea area with Amazons, on the imported from Athens red figure, is very popular. But if we sum up all the data from all the publications, we see that the main part of the Athenian red figure with Amazons is found on the territory of Pantikapayon, the capital of the Bosporan kingdom, and its surroundings. Beyond the borders of the Bosporan kingdom and Greek settlements on so-called barbarian territories, to the current moment, only one such vase has been found. The finds of these vases are typical of the excavations in the Greek settlements or on the territories under the Greek cultural influence. What means we should not speak about projection of local barbarian myths, if they existed, on the Athenian red figure, but about knowledge of the Greek myths and understanding of the pictures by the consumers of these vases, even if they lived far away from Athens. In 2011 in Munich, I demonstrated some examples of this understanding. For instance, 3 vases of different shapes by different painters, but apparently intentionally collected in the same burial, because Paris and Helene are presented on there. It is one of the graves of the Yuzabarich in Kerch. Burials identified it as the graves of the Bosporan aristocracy. This is a 2-chamber burial of a man and a woman. So we can speculate about possibility of self-identification with Paris and Helen. The only case known to me when we can speak about possible self-identification with an Amazon is a female burial of the same Yuzabarich. The buried lady had high leather boots on her legs, and on her body a dress decorated with the depiction of a riding Amazon attacking a griffin. Among the grave goods, there is a lekithos in a shape and a ring with the depiction of dancing Amazons, short chiton with Greek color, and boots of the depicted Amazons can remind us the short purple-green chiton and boots of the buried woman. The presence of 3 items with the depiction of Amazons can give a hint on interest to the subject. Let us come back to the Athenian red figure with Amazons found in different places of the northern Black Sea. The depiction of Amazons fighting Greeks is very popular. Precisely like in early red figure or black figure, Amazons are presented both in Greek and barbarian dresses, on horsebacks, chariots, on feet, with red figure or white flesh. The depiction of Amazons fighting griffins is also very popular with the same variations. Amazons on horseback, on chariots, on feet, with 1, 2, or even 3 griffins. Numerous and standard are the items with heads. Amazon with 1 griffin, Amazon with 2 griffins, Amazon with a griffin and a horse. The subject is very popular on Pelika, but appears also on craters, Sometimes not only heads are presented, but the head of the Amazon is combined with the griffin in full. In contrary to the griffomachis of Amazons, all these vases demonstrate peaceful relations between Amazons and griffins. Thus, we can state that Amazons can be both allies and enemies of the griffins. In addition, we should witness the presence of some rarer subjects. For instance, 2 very similar vases in Louvre and Theodosia Museum. We see Amazons riding white griffins and at the same time attacking red figure griffins. Again, griffin as ally horse, and at the same time griffin as an enemy. 2 other vases on this picture, in Yalta and in the Hermitage Museum, show us something what looks like a dance of Amazons and griffins. We see no weapon. Griffins behave rather like playful pets than like aggressive enemies. We can remember here dancing winged Amazons from Apulian red figure discussed by Schneider Hermann, or craters from Almina published by Metzger, with detailed explanation that these are Amazons dancing in Dionysian context. Recently, I was dealing with fragments of 2 red figure craters, which have never been published before. The first was excavated in Pantikapaion. Big part of site A has preserved 2 Amazons and 1 bearded man in similar barbarian dress are fighting together against griffins. The second was excavated in Chersonesos. Of the site B, only small part preserved with grape and head in wreath must be part of symposium or Dionysian procession. On the site A, there is a battle. Amazons and bearded barbarians are fighting together against the griffin. Even though only front paws of the beast have preserved, I think it's a griffin, though variant with chimera is also possible. The nearest analogy in subject composition and details is the crater in Brussels. Similar faces, pattern on dresses and shield, composition with figures on different levels, with trees and white griffins. Also similar, bearded man held Bellerophon and his fight against Chimera on the crater in Naples. It is unusual that bearded barbarians held Bellerophon. According to myths, we know he had managed without any help, just riding Pegasus. But even more unusual is the painting on the crater from Villa Giulia. In this case, instead of bearded barbarians, Amazons with spelt-like shields and axes held Bellerophon. By the way, absolutely the same subject appears also on Apulian vases, like on this sample. The most interesting for me is that Amazons fight against the death-bringing monster, doesn't matter griffin or chimera, together with bearded man and Bellerophon. Anticipating possible questions, I should make step aside and touch the subject of the so-called arimasps on the Athenian red figure. The first and natural wish of a scholar brought up in the traditions of the 18th and the 19th century is to perceive the painted vases as illustration for the Greek texts. At that time, vases often were exhibited with the purpose in the libraries. And thanks to Herodotus, everyone knows that these are arimasps who fight griffins, point. But we know enough cases when the vase painting don't illustrate the text and even more demonstrate contradictions with the text. And when we have no doubts about the participants of the scene because they are named. On this skythos, a hoplite fights a griffin. On this cup, a griffin attacks satyr. These are definitely not arimasps, even though they are fighting griffins. On Pelikai, we see bearded men. One is dressed in barbarian style, the other one in Greek chiton. As Askold Ivanchik demonstrated in his detailed study, Trifomachi was well known already in Mykenaean, Assyrian, Syro-Phoenician art. It refers to certain mythical enemies of mythical creatures. And I think it's the same on the vases. As for the griffin riders, on the vases we see Dionysus, Apollo, Artemis, Menads, riding griffins or driving a chariot with griffins. In some cases, we see definitely female breasts of the griffin fighters and griffin riders on both Athenian and Italian vases, and on some other pictures like the floor from Mesono mosaic. But as we witness, comparing other female images from the vases, for instance Artemis, to paint breasts under the folds of dresses is not necessary. It is obvious, for example, on this Apulian crater, where Amazons again held Bellerophon. The painter drew carefully breasts of two Amazons and didn't draw breasts of the third one, though she is dressed and equipped absolutely like the two others. In many cases, richly ornamented dress of Amazons just doesn't allow the painter to show the breasts. One more argument for me can be seen on two craters from Museo du Louvre, with Dionysian scenes on the lower level and Griffomachi on the upper one. We see as griffin fighters three types of humans: bearded men in barbarian dress, beardless humans with short-cut and uncovered head, and long-haired humans with the cap like on numerous vases with heads of Amazons. Why do we need three types on the same vase if they depict the same folk of arimasps? And by the way, we have no information from the text about female arimasps. As Martin Langner noted, dress, hairstyle, and weapon do not allow us to distinguish between Amazons and so-called arimasps. It only tells us about inhabitants of northern eastern suburbs. And precisely in this, there is a special charm of this image. It gives us much freedom of the interpretation. To his statement, I should add that we have many images of Amazons on the Athenian vases, when the context or the names leave no doubts that these are Amazons. As for arimasps, we do not have even one picture. Amazons are widespread enough in Athenian vase painting from the 6th to the 4th century BC, by the way, even more in black figure than in red figure. They were also popular in South Italian vase painting, so it's not something exclusively connected to the northern Black Sea export. By the way, it's very curious that nobody tries to find arimasps on the Athenian black figure, and I know only 2 cases when griffin fighters are attested like arimasps on the 5th century red figure. As for the 4th century, more or less half of the Amazons are defined like arimasps. Doesn't matter where the vase is found, in the northern Black Sea, Spain, Turkey, or Greece. So it looks like the Athenian vase painters did not have pictorial narrative tradition of depiction of arimasps, and then absolutely unexpectedly, one day they decided to paint many arimasps on the 4th century red figure. Of course, Amazons is a barbarian Eastern folk, loved both by Greek and Roman artisans in periods when it helped to construct Greek or Roman identity, to demonstrate superiority over the non-Greek or non-Roman enemy. We can observe similar increasing of the number of Amazons on the Athenian vases in the first half of the 5th century BC during the Persian War, and in the 4th century BC when it was a long period of wars. On one hand, they are something exotic, like all the unusual folks, living far away, having unusual dress and appearance. But Amazons are also women, behaving like men. What is curious for the society used to traditional model of female behavior. And in the composition with the heads, they look not less ornate and feminine as all the decorative female heads on Athenian and Italian vases. In his superb study of Roman sarcophagi, Russenberger quotes Roman lyrics, where a woman is compared with an Amazon. So the battle of Amazon and man is also literary battle of oppositions, female-male, or even in some cases a love fight. He also demonstrated enough reliefs with Amazonomachia on sarcophagi connected to spouses, and wrote about compassion to both sides of the battle, because all the humans are equally defenseless in front of the death, doesn't matter to which folk or gender they belong. The sarcophagus or the vase decorated with men and Amazons is good for customers of both genders. Due to their unusual behavior, they are women but they behave like men, Amazons are not only connected to Artemis or Dionysus, with his upside-down world where everything is possible, but they are also a kind of special creature, belonging to 2 different worlds, in the same way as griffins. Amazons have features of men and women, griffins features of birds and animals. As Martin Lamir noted, it is very rare when Amazons find somebody together with men. In his study, he published this pelike from the Hermitage Museum. Greek-dressed men, with the help of Amazons, are fighting against other Greek-dressed men. He suggests that the Athenian vase painters knew about marriages between Greeks and locals in the Bosporan kingdom, and wanted to paint such subjects for these international Greek barbarian couples to please the Bosporan customers, who had to recognize themselves, make self-identification of the Greek and his Scythian wife. In the same way, he suggests to treat also very rare subject, an Amazon fighting another Amazon. Something like Bosporan women from nomad tribes are fighting for attention of a Greek man, potential husband. This idea is very beautiful, but in my opinion, it doesn't explain why Amazons, together with bearded men, fight against griffins, or why Amazons help Bellerophon to fight Chimera. I guess an explanation should be connected to faraway located lands. Great travelers like Dionysos can reach them. These lands have with different folks and rules and creatures. In some compositions, laurel is depicted, so maybe it's even the better afterlife world. And all these vases are craters, found both in graves and in houses. The crater from Pantikapayon bears traces of mending. Doesn't matter, Italian or Athenian vases, it is a kind of image of exotic utopia or faraway lands, as Langer called it. Craters decorated like this are good both for burial and symposium. They show certain fantastic world where the alliance of natural enemies, like Greeks and barbarians, Bellerophon and Amazons, men and women, is possible. And thus, we are speaking not about identification of the Amazons with the barbarian women lived in the northern Black Sea region, but about long time and widespread in the Mediterranean tradition of depiction of these faraway lands, with certain understandable by included to the Greek culture people set of visual narrative codes. Thank you for your attention.